I bought a duplex in Toledo, Ohio for $20,000 cash. The contractor quoted me $18,675 to rehab the whole thing and said it would take 2 months. It actually took 14 months, and that's only because I fired him. I'm an attorney, I review contracts for a living, and still, I walked into the situation because I was excited about the deal and I skipped steps that I know better than to skip. So today, I'm giving you everything: the numbers, the mistakes, and the four things that I'd put into every contractor agreement going forward because I don't want you learning this the hard way like I did. Okay, so real quick context. If you've seen my Toledo video, some of this will sound familiar, but I'm going to get deeper today on the parts that I glossed over. So, December 2023, I bought a fire damage duplex in Toledo through a realtor that I never met before. In fact, she was a referral. So I bought the fire damage duplex and there was no mortgage, no lender, just my own money. And at that time, I thought it was a flex, right? Like, oh my gosh, I bought it cash. Hey, I'm in there. Turns out that was part of the problem. And I'll come back to that. So the property was a mess to say the least, but the bones were good. And a local contractor referred by the realtor came highly recommended and quoted me $18,675 for labor and materials for the entire duplex, right? Now, this is a 3-bed, 1 bath on each level. Entrance. So that's something that we have to fix later. Okay, so for 6 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms, less than $20,000. Okay. Now, he said he could have it done in 20 days, but told me that he would quote me 2 months just to give himself some wiggle room. All right. Now, here's the thing: he told me up front that he doesn't require payment before the work is done and he gets paid as the work is completed. And he also told me that the reason his costs are so low is because he has so little overhead because it's him and a small team, right? So I'm like, oh, bet, that's great. Now, he's not asking me to hand over a bunch of money and before he's done any work, which a lot of contractors do, they require you to put down like 25%. And I was like, that feels like it's protecting me. And that was one of the red flags that I completely missed. So here's what I didn't understand at the time. When a contractor doesn't require upfront payment of any sort, it can mean one of two things. One, they are super professional and confident in their work. Or two, they have no financial incentive to finish your job on time because they're going to get paid along the way regardless. There's no lump sum waiting for them at the end. There's no finish by this date or you don't get paid. They just get a little money here, a little money there whenever work gets done, which means your timeline is competing with every other job they're juggling. It's hell. And because I told him, silly me, that I did not have a mortgage, there was no urgency. None. Okay. There was no urgency from a lender pushing the timeline, requiring things to be done by this certain time. No one was calling saying, hey, when's this going to be done? It was just me. And I was out of state and I was excited and I trusted the process. So the first few months, things were moving. I mean, it was slow, but it was moving. It was winter. He got the roof done. I paid $3,700 for the roof. Then he started on the lower unit to get some things fixed for the upper unit. I paid like $1,350 for that. Then he got into the upper unit. And that one, I ended up paying $7,250 because that was the unit that needed less work. So we were like, let's do that one first and then move on to the one that needs more work. And then things just started to stall. So weeks would go by with no update. I'd reach out and get very vague responses. And I didn't have anyone checking on the property at the time, but I eventually got a realtor to start checking on the property. And she started flagging that no one was really showing up consistently and that work that he said was being done wasn't really done. And she thought he was dealing with a serious personal situation. She said she believed he was dealing with drug addiction. And I was like, ooh, okay. And see, I have compassion for that. I genuinely do. But I also paid you to do a job or, hired you to do a job and had a property sitting half finished, right? Rent I wasn't collecting, money I'd already paid for work that wasn't complete, right? That you said was complete. And by February 2025, 14 months after I bought that property, I fired him. 14 months, y'all, for what was supposed to be a 2-month job. What was supposed to be a 20-day job, supposedly. And the thing that gets me, and I want to be really honest about this, is that I'm not even mad at him, right? I'm more frustrated with myself because I knew better, right? I have a law degree. I know what a contract is supposed to do. I know what clauses protect you. And I got so excited about that deal that I just didn't apply any of it. You tell yourself, like, I'll get to that, and you don't. And, yeah, that was me. So the good news is one unit is now rented out, and each unit could rent out for $1,000 a month. And so that money is coming in, no debt against it, no mortgage, no lender to answer to. Love that for me. But the lower unit still needs work. And every month that it's not rented is another $1,000 at least that I'm leaving on the table. Okay. If we multiply that by every month of the year, that's leaving $12,000 on the table per year that it's not done. So here's what I would do completely differently. And I want you to actually write these down because these are the things that I wish someone had told me before I handed over my first dollar. All right. So, number one, milestone payments only, no exceptions. Not, I'll pay you when all the work is done. Actual phases spelled out in the agreement beforehand. Phase 1, demo and rough-in complete. Here's your payment. Phase 2, electrical and plumbing. Here's your next payment. Final walkthrough with 0 punch list items. Here's the last payment. And every phase having a date attached to it. Now, it doesn't need to be rigid, but let's just put that out up front. If you say you can do it in 20 days, let's put some dates on it. And when money is tied to a deadline, people tend to meet the deadline. That's just human nature. All right, number 2, a timeline penalty clause in the contract. This does not have to be complicated. It can literally say contractor agrees to complete phase 1 by whatever date. For each day past that date, phase 1 is not complete. Contractor agrees to a daily penalty of blank dollars deducted from the final payment. Now, you say you can do it in 20 days. You really gonna think about that 20 days when there's a penalty attached to those dates, right? Now, as an attorney, I can tell you, you do not need a lawyer to write this. You need it to be in writing, right? And you need both parties to sign it and agree to it. Now, that's it. The fact is that it changes the entire dynamic of the whole project. Number 3, never, I mean, never tell your contractor you don't have a mortgage. First of all, that ain't none of their business, okay? If you need them to think that so that they can put some fire under their butts and move faster, let it be, okay? It's none of their business if you have financing or not. And they are more inclined to work faster if they believe that you are, being held to the fire by a lender and you have a draw schedule and there's this just timing attached to everything, right? When you tell them you don't have a mortgage, they think they got forever and they will act accordingly. For number 4, I would say get some boots on the ground. See, I was investing out of state, so I can't just drive by on a Tuesday and see what's happening. I had a realtor who was helpful, but she wasn't a project manager. And, that just wasn't her job. So for a renovation of this size, which was like a total gut, you should definitely have a project manager. And I've done that on other projects, just didn't do it with this one. Okay. But having someone there physically checking the property on a regular basis and reporting back to me gives you such peace of mind. Right. And I mean, I looked for a project manager for this one, but I didn't look hard enough. Right. I mean, I could have totally continued looking, and it is worth every penny. I used a project manager on my Chicago project. Fantastic. Now, it may cost you $1,000 to a couple $1,000s for the length of the project, but what does 14 months of no tenant cost you, right? Because the property is just sitting and not producing. That's the real question. So for me, that was $14,000 in delayed rental income, at least from just one unit, right? And a project manager would have paid for itself over time because they would have been on top of it and making sure the work is being complete. Okay, so let's talk about the full picture because I think this is actually the most important part. So I paid $20,000 to acquire the property. That was December 2023. I paid the contractor a total of $12,300 for the roof, a little bit of the lower unit, and some of the upper unit work. And so I'm all in for about $32,300 on this property right now. The projected ARV, also known as the after repair value, is somewhere between $120,000 and $140,000. I have zero debt on the property, no mortgage, no lender, no monthly payment owed to anyone. So yes, the situation was frustrating. I lost time. There was money I should have been collecting that I wasn't. But I also own a property in cash that could be worth 4 times what I paid for it. And that upper unit is already cash flowing while I'm figuring out the next steps for the lower unit, which is actively progressing very well. The deal wasn't, the issue, right? I didn't make a mistake on the actual deal, the acquisition, the cost and everything. That part was great, right? So I did my analysis, great. The mistake is how I managed the process after I closed. And the crazy thing is, this is the second time, okay? And I mean, I guess that's not crazy in the grand scheme of things because, I'm technically still fairly new to real estate, but this is the second time I'm having contractor issues. I mean, definitely different issues. So it's always a learning process, but it just doesn't feel good, right? And so that's the lesson, right? Finding a good deal is one skill, and I'm doing very well in that area. Managing what happens after the deal, especially with contractors, is a completely different skill. Okay. And I'm still learning that one clearly. Right. So if you're thinking about your first cash deal or you're already in one and you're dealing with a contractor situation, let me know in the comments. Okay. I genuinely read every single one and I will respond. And if you haven't seen the original Toledo video where I talk about how I found the property and how the deal actually worked out, I will link that right here for you because that's where the story starts. And so I'll see you in the next one and stay encouraged.